All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Dan Time Podcast. I'm your host, Dan McCardle. I'm so glad you're here. And happy almost Halloween. Don't you love having these holidays that we run through in full effect on the weekend before, or even the whole week before, and then we have it again on the actual day. And then on Wednesday, we act like it never happened and we're marching on to Thanksgiving. Hey, you'll have all those yellow starburst and the orange starburst and all those little strawberry bonbons in a bucket on top of your fridge till New Year's. Okay, last week we heard from a man of many talents, Sean Henniger. If you've missed a few weeks, go back and throw a dart, catch up on any of these episodes. DJ Sims, singer-songwriter Dan Harrison, Dan Kabelka, one of my favorite episodes. Dan is a champion of special needs ball players in Chatham, Ontario, Canada. Vic Penn, Chris Furmeister. See, it's not all Dan's all the time. And today I'm ecstatic to bring to you Long Beach, California comedian Daniel Eachus. Daniel was born and raised in Fresno, California. He graduated from Cal State Long Beach, and he became the youngest finalist ever of the funniest comic in LA comedy contest at the John Lovitz Comedy Club in 2010. Check out his website at danieleachus.com. That's EACHUS. His latest stand-up album, Where's Daniel, is available for download on all music platforms. Folks, it is a perfectly good idea to jump off this episode right now, go download that album, and then come back to Dan Time. It's a few finger taps away. You can find Daniel on Twitch TV, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. Daniel even recorded podcast episodes, Your Worst Favorite Podcast, which I highly recommend. So look that one up. He's got a book out, A Day at the Zoo in 2062. You're going to love his take on beer at the movie theater, angry dads at Disneyland, and nobody needs French fries. You've got to check out on YouTube. Don't be skinny, Daniel Eachus. Some of the comments, wow, what a set. This guy is on his way to greater success. The whole set had me rolling. Gotta keep a lookout for more of this guy. Another commenter, his jokes are so multi-layered, I spent more time laughing at his wordplay than anything. Wow, most comedians only make me laugh 3 or 4 times during their set, but this guy had me laughing so hard through his entire set. So funny. Now I'll have to search YouTube for more of his videos. I am also thin and afraid of the wind because it can literally blow me away. You're going to love this conversation. We talk about what it's really like to work as a comic around the clock, how the book came together, his other projects, how Daniel perseveres, and what he likes to do for fun when he's not constantly working on new material. Daniel is a huge football fan and loves the Fresno State Bulldogs and Minnesota Vikings. If you've got a Carnival Cruise vacation booked for early next year, there's a great chance that you'll see Daniel perform. He'll also be appearing this Saturday at Comedy Row in Visalia, California, and Sunday at Anime Pasadena. Then dates later this month in Cave Junction and Grants Pass, Oregon. All right, let's get to the conversation. Folks, it is Daniel Eachus time. Daniel, I just want to say this kind of connects to the theme of Dan Time, the podcast of Dan talking to other Dans and rooting for people that have the same name. Daniel, the lankiness, the skinniness, I lived in this world my whole life, and to see a guy that resembles my body, I guess are we endomorphs? I just naturally root for you. And so I just want to kind of throw that out there at the start. How are you doing today?
Good. Still lanky, still skinny. It's all for the comedy. You know what I mean? I did this for the joke. No, yeah, I've always been like this.
I always like the adjective gangly.
Yeah. Well, you like it until it comes across on like a Tinder message or something, and you're like, well, I don't know about that.
Well, Daniel, you're a pretty busy guy. You're not one-dimensional. Some people have heard about you through your comedy album or things that you've done on stage. A lot of people don't know that you're also a writer and producer. So
I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to start off, but for people who have just never heard of you, I guess give me a little background on how you got started in the business and maybe flash forward to where you are right now.
Yeah. Well, spoiler alert. Right now, I'm in my room in front of a closet, but we'll go back and I guess talk about the beginning. I, it's funny if you're in LA or SoCal at all. Every person, your mailman is also a writer and producer. You know what I mean? Like everyone has that title. So I always feel weird even just like saying it because it's like, of course you are. You know what I mean? Like, I joked about dating apps earlier, but that's like sort of a running joke on there. Like, anytime like somebody asks you like, what do you do? And you tell her like, oh, this is, I'm on this and this. It's always like, of course you are. Of course you're an actor. Everyone is apparently. But it is true. I do a lot of acting stuff for commercials mostly. I think I've been in it's like 22 nationals right now. Big stuff. Google, Belvita, Breakfast Bars, Fruit of the Loom. Oh my God, I lose the track. Virgin Mobile. It's the Amazon. There's been a lot of them. HP. That's a new one that's coming out like any day now.
Do you ever get some offers where you just say, let me think about that one for a second. I really hate that product. Or
Oh, I
is it?
wish. I wish I was in that position to turn stuff down. Um, Never like, oh, I hate that product, but there have been ones where I'm like, do we need a commercial for this? I guess I don't want to. There's a certain, not that anything. It was a great commercial, great people to work with, but I guess without naming names, there's a certain state that is especially known for having the best potatoes, and we all know that this state makes the best potatoes, and for some reason they decided they needed national advertisement for this recently. I don't know why. I haven't seen these commercials yet, but they're I don't even know who number 2 is. You know what I
That's
mean? Like,
that's the state where you're in fourth grade and you're like, what's the one thing that everybody knows about Nebraska? And I don't really remember, but when you got to Idaho, sorry, I spoiled it, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody knew what else. And sorry for anybody listening in Idaho, because there's a lot there, but
Well, yeah, it's potatoes, and that Boise State has a blue football field. That's the only thing anyone ever knows about it. But yeah, anyway, there's been so many random commercials. They're always fun roles. It's not about the product being weird, but usually what I'm asked to do. A good example of that was I did a commercial for Dollar Shave Club, and it was I don't know what you call them, but I kind of call them like ensemble commercials. It's like the commercial where there's just like a lot of different lead actors in it, not one single person. And so we all kind of got cast together and we all auditioned for many different roles. So we didn't know exactly which role we were going to be playing or if we had even auditioned for the role that we had ended up ultimately getting. And this one was filmed at the Universal Studios backlot. And as someone who grew up in California my whole life, I had gone to Universal Studios, the theme park, so many times. And that backlot tour, if you've ever been, that's like the biggest, best thing there. And it was something that I always like just dreamed about, being able to like film a movie or film something in the Universal Studios backlot. So sure enough, I get cast in this Dollar Shave Club commercial. And they're like, we're filming in the Universal Studios backlot. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. I get there on set. They're like, we're going to do our costume fitting there. It's going to be great. You'll find out what role you're going to play. Perfect. So I'm with all these, like, I mean, it's all dudes in there. It's all Dollar Shave Club people. So it's like a bunch of guys in there, and one at a time, people are going in, and then they're coming out in their costume. And it's if you've seen a Dollar Shave Club commercial, they're always funny. So, guys were coming out just wearing like, oh yeah, I'm like, nothing crazy. Just like, oh, I guess I'm like a sports guy and his hair's crazy and he's in like, a half a jersey with his stomach exposed and we're all laughing and high fiving each other and having a good time. I just happen to be last. And so they're all like, oh, I wonder what you're going to be, Daniel. Because I saw the people the roles I had auditioned for, they already came out. So I was like, I guess I didn't audition for the role I got because I've seen them all in this room already. So I go into the wardrobe room, and the lady just goes, well, here it is. And she just hands me, it's basically a Speedo, skin tight Speedo the same color as my skin. And I was like, okay, so what else? And she's like, that's it. And I'm like, that's what, so like, but do I just wear my shirt? And she's like, no, nothing else, just that. And I was like, what's my role? And she's like, she looks at a paper. She goes, you are your man seeing how high you can pee in the shower. I was like, okay, all right. So I guess I'm supposed to be naked. They're like, yeah, you're supposed to be naked, I guess, for the commercial. So I just go out there in a Speedo. And I'm like, I guess I can't get any weirder than this. I go on the set, we go to film, and it's a backlot. It's not a real house. So they created a bathroom in there for me to film in, like just in the movie studio. Side note, we were randomly in the studio. They're filming all the new, like some reboot episodes of Will and Grace or something. But anyway, they emptied it and they created this bathroom in there for me to film in. And what I didn't think about until the water turned on was that because it's not a real bathroom, it doesn't have hot water. It's just a hose. So it's freezing water coming out of there. Also, there's no actual drain. I mean, it's a tub, but it's just like concrete under, so it's not, the water's not going anywhere. So they had to fill the drain with concrete. So the water's just building up to my ankles. I'm like, oh, this is early onset frostbite is what I'm feeling right now, I'm pretty sure. I'm freezing cold in a thong or in a Speedo.
Right.
And then they give me this hose that's filled with fake pee. And they're like, yeah, so this is what you're going to hold. And you're going to do this motion. They give me the action. You're like, you're just going to, pee's going to come out. And there's going to be pee all over the wall. And like, we're going to do a bunch of takes doing a bunch of different things. I'm freezing. I'm like, this is so weird. I don't have any lines. This is kind of crazy. They stopped me after the first take. And they're like, sorry, this is a long story. And they're like, Daniel, sorry, we can, every time your Speedo is getting pink when it gets wet. So, and we can tell you're wearing a Speedo, which you're obviously not supposed to be. So we're going to have to give you something smaller. And I was like, smaller. And this lady just comes out with a literal thong and goes, you got to put this on. I was like, right now? They're like, yeah. And I was like, I was not mentally prepared for this day at all. It was like 6 a.m. too. I'd already been up for like 3 hours. Okay, so I put on this thong. We filmed this commercial. Honestly, one of the hardest acting things I've ever done in my life. I know a lot of times we kind of click through commercials we don't really pay attention to, but we're usually asked to do so many things in such a small shot. And this was one that was like especially difficult because of how freezing I was. And they were pumping fog to make it look steamy. And the director just kept telling me, hey, just remember, it's hot, feels great, it's warm. It's like 40-degree water. I'm sitting there.
It's anything but hot.
It's everything but hot. My nipples are hard. It's like not a good feeling. I'm wearing a thong. And there was this like sort of moment of clarity that I had at one point where they were laughing, like it was great. They said, cut.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, they were having a great time. They cut it. And they're like, hold on, we're going to take a look at some stuff. And I had this moment of clarity where there's like fake pee all over the wall. I'm up to my ankles in water. I'm wearing a thong and there's cameras all around me. And I was like, never in my life did I ever think that this would be my Universal Studios backlot experience.
I'm sure the average person didn't realize that there could possibly be that much mystery that goes into an experience like that of, half an hour before you couldn't have dreamed up this scenario, this outfit that you're in, and here you are.
A lot of times they don't tell us what our role is going to be or exactly what we're doing. I mean, I've had it happen multiple times where, you're being sort of chauffeured around everywhere by all these different people and, oh, meet so-and-so and this is the actor. Okay, great. But hold on, we're going to take you. You're going to sign this thing. And okay. And then you get on set and they're like, okay, ready? And action. And you're like, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing. They'll be like, cut. Okay. Did anyone give them a script? I'm like, there's a script? Like that's happened so many times. I did one for a company called Honey, which is like a web, I guess it's like a thing that goes on your browser and you get like, it finds you coupons for like online shopping. And they were doing a big Christmas promotion. And I was with someone else in the scene who we didn't know which of the two roles, which were very different roles with very different lines, we didn't know which one we were doing. And sort of based off context clues and what we were wearing, we're like, I'm pretty sure these are mine. So we're back there memorizing our parts and our parts only. We get onto the set, they say action, and we had the roles wrong. And neither of us knew the other's lines. So they're like scrambling to figure out how do we, okay, get them the scripts, let's hurry. This is like right during the middle of COVID, which had all these protocols, and so we had to be quick on set, and it's a lot less organized than you would think.
When you see
Yeah.
the
So I
Swift,
was gonna say it has nothing to do with the companies, by the way. It could be the biggest, best companies in the world, and it's just every commercial shoot is always insanely unorganized.
wow, yeah. So it could be near calamity multiple times over just to film a Swifter commercial. I mean,
Yeah.
a young mother sweeping her kitchen or showing off the new vacuum or something. I mean, that could have been just a hellacious. How many hours do you sometimes spend trying to cut a 30-minute TV ad like that?
Yeah, 30 second.
Or 30 second,
Honestly,
30.
yeah, days. That Dollar Shave Club one was it was over. I wasn't there every day, but it was 2 weeks. I think I was there for 5 days doing that, which was fun because I got to eat lunch on the if you've ever been to the back lot, there's a famous the New York City street that they've done Seinfeld on. They do a million movies and commercials on this street. And we got to eat on that, but it was especially fun for me because all the tram tours were going by, and people kind of figured out quickly, like, these must be extras. I don't know any, I don't see Chris Pratt. I don't know any of these people or whatever. But they would see me, the one guy who had to wear a robe because I was 99% naked underneath. And you see a guy on a robe eating a sandwich on the back lot. You're like, I don't know who that is, but he's famous. Why else would he be in a robe right now? So I had so many people taking pictures of me back there. Little did they know I was in a thong. But yeah, it's wild. Every experience is just completely different. And the amount of stories and the amount of, I know I did a Virgin Mobile one where I played a meat smoker. I'll let you figure out how those two things are connected. And I thought for sure they're like, yeah, you're in this garage, but we're going to make it look like a butcher's locker lair. I don't know what you call where a butcher works. And they used real meat, like giant, I don't know what those things weigh, 40 pounds each, like hunks of meat hanging everywhere. And then they didn't use fog. They used actual barbecue smoke, which I'm like, how is any of this, I don't know, legal or something? I feel like we're all getting high off fumes right now. And
Do you ever see people that were there that morning or part of the week and they just never came back and said, I'm done with this?
No, I've seen people get cut out. Never from anything. I've never seen any like dramatic, Christian Bale blowups or anything. But I've seen people sadly get cut out where, a lot of times the director, they don't always know exactly what the scene's going to be or what they want, because commercial directors have a tough job. They're usually, I mean, to be honest, not to stereotype, but they're usually very creative people who are trying to make their name as directors, who are just doing this for the money, because it's not much of they don't even have a credit. You don't know who directs any of these commercials. And I've seen I've had some directors that directed, I did a Top Golf commercial that was directed by, I'm forgetting his name, but the director who directed all of the Eric Andre show, and there's a prank movie Eric Andre came out with that he directed that was just in theaters, and he's doing a Top Golf commercial. So they usually do it because it's great money, and but a lot of them are very, very qualified at what they do, and now they're on this set where at the end of the day, it's the company has the last word. So the director might be the quote unquote like expert on the film stuff, and it'll be like, cut, this is the best version of that scene, that's the funniest version, it's great. And they'll be like, okay, do you have any notes, company? And the company will have some absurd thing usually that's like, oh yeah, we want them to say this word instead, and it makes no sense, but they want it because it's their product and it's their money. And I've seen so many like directors fight with the brand to try to get their ideas in and all that. And sometimes that means at the last second being like, well, I guess we don't need that actor, I guess, then coming in and saying that line. So yeah, you can go home. Fortunately, that's never happened to me. Would have been extra sad to be sent home wearing a thong after all that work. But I've seen it happen, and it's always sad because everyone's excited to be there, and then it's like, well, okay, Steve, you can leave now. We don't need you anymore. You're not in the commercial.
Well, Daniel, I want to real quick, just before we get too far ahead, I want to talk about your current album, your comic album. Probably saying that all wrong. Your stand-up album. Where's Daniel? And I've been listening to this thing for the past couple weeks, and front to back, track by track. It can almost skip around if you have to do it randomly, which I had that setting accidentally when I was listening to it. But
Oh, that's funny. You're like, why did he introduce himself in the middle? That was weird.
this thing is a riot, Daniel. And I want to also get ahead of something here too. Your approach to stand-up comedy, and you're in nightclubs, you're talking to adults who are having adult beverages, but your comedy is not profanity laced, and it's hilarious. And I think there are, I wouldn't even say most people, but I think there's some people that think that you got to be a little bit vulgar to really come over the top and be hilarious. I disagree, but I wanted to comment on that approach and how you find success with that and how you enjoy writing like that. Is it more challenging?
Yeah, I've always it's funny, I've always hated the word clean, when people
Yeah,
say, "Oh, you do clean comic." And it's like a not a pet peeve, but I just it
it's
always
actually
sounds so boring to me. You know what I mean? If someone was like, "Let's go see a clean comedy show," I'd be like, "Oh, this is going to be the worst." And I've always just done what I thought was funny. And to me, most of the time, like all like dirty material, all involves around sex basically. And to me, in my head, that's always just been one subject. That's it. I'm not against talking about it, but it's like, why would you make your whole career talking about one subject?
some pretty
When they're
well-worn paths, I think. If a guy gets up there and does a sex routine, and you're thinking, okay, I heard whoever in the 70s or 80s do this and do it pretty well.
right. Yeah, because it's just one thing. And there's only so many stories out there, and you're like, all right, I'm not. It's never been like a moral high ground thing or anything like that. It's always just like there's so much more out there to explore, and I feel like I always tried to stick to more universal subjects, just to one try to bring everybody in, but two just to try to be uniquely me or whatever that means,
And
and talk about everything that I wanted to talk about.
in the opening track, and I won't give away any details here, but just the title, if anybody had some doubts, like you said, clean comedy is not really the best catch-all. Drunk at a movie theater is the way this album kicks off. And you're speaking my language there. What really got me rolling, though, because I am a dad, was there's a bit there in the middle of the return of Disneyland.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you want to give any go into any detail here, have at it. I'm not going to do it, but there's a line in there that is just hilarious. I've been there in some other situation.
Yeah. I have I live pretty close to Disneyland. My friends convinced me to get a Disney pass, which is a whole nother story. But so I've been there pretty regularly, maybe once a month, and or once every couple months, whatever. But I could not help but notice, especially when you have a pass, the money part of it, it's done. You already paid for it. It's out the window. So you can kind of just sit back and enjoy yourself now. We'll sometimes we'll go to Starbucks. We won't worry about like, we're at Disneyland. Let's get the most out of our money. Let's ride every ride, which is the way I, always approach it as a kid with my family, because it was like, we're here for one day, do everything. We've been a lot to be here. But now that I have a pass, I could actually just, sort of, okay, we can take a break and go eat lunch and hang out and, sit over here and eat a churro or drink coffee and then go on a ride. And when you do that, you can't help but notice all of the angriest dads who,
We just had
you
it.
know, my dad's been there, I've seen it a million times, who are just, it's 2 p.m., it's 1 p.m., and they're just over it already, over all of the money they spent, the family, everybody wants to ride different rides, and it's probably not funny to them, but it's absolutely hilarious to me, sitting back and watching that while eating a churro, and I enjoyed it, so I had to talk about it, and that's made it on the second track of the album.
Another track on here, Nobody Needs French Fries. I wanted to talk about your affinity for Taco Bell and just the overabundance of French fries. Every other place you go, you get the sandwich and the fries, the burger and the fries, the whatever, the nuggets and the fries. And how many fries do we have to eat?
Yeah.
It's refreshing going to Taco Bell, and you just don't get tots or fries. You just get something wrapped up with the meat and the cheese and the lettuce and the oozy stuff, but it's not
exactly
French fries.
It's only entrees. You know what I mean? Yeah, they don't even really make sides. I mean, ironically, now they have the nacho fries there too, but most people don't get those, and I guess you can get chips if you want. But yeah, shout out to Taco Bell, who, by the way, not accidentally, maybe it was an accident. They sent me coupons for the first time ever. I don't even know that was needed, but then when I saw them, I was like, oh my god, this was definitely needed. Just
Daniel, I got to
in my
ask you
soul.
this. I've got some questions on these episodes that I usually save for the end, but every once in a while I'll pepper one in the middle of the episode. Okay, have you ever yourself or have you ever known somebody who has won one of those back of the receipt sweepstakes where you call in the survey, you tell them about your experience, and you win the $500? I have never in my life that they've been printing those things on the Dollar General receipts or the Taco Bell. Do these things actually get doled out?
I don't think anyone takes them up on it. I think you'd probably win immediately if you called, because they'd be like, "Oh my god, you called! What is?" The funniest one to me is you go to Taco Bell, and I don't know if they all have this, but definitely a few of the ones that I've been to. Have you ever gone to the ones where they'll say, "Would you like to round up, or would you like to donate your change for education?" And it's just education. I'm like, whose education is this? And how come I've never in my life gone to a school and be like, how'd you guys get such nice desks? And they're like, well, because of the cheesy gordita crunch, baby. That paid for all this. Like, where's this money actually going? Taco Bell schools don't exist. Where's this money going to?
Right.
Yeah, I feel like you could just call in right now and probably win automatically. I've always just wanted to call and be like, I think you guys are doing great. I have nothing more to say. I don't want anything from this. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I ran through a Taco Bell today in honor of this episode, and the customer service, at least the one that I went to, and if I do go, it's superb. It's head and shoulders above the other guy, the burger guys, where they used to call them. It's just a very underwhelming experience a lot of places, but Taco Bell that's another thing that people don't, when they take selfies and they take pictures of their food at the nice restaurant and they post it, people never take a picture of a double cheeseburger. And I mean, there's some delicious sandwiches out there, but nobody really promotes the awesome $7 and whatever lunch that they had.
Yeah.
Why do we act like we don't do this?
I think, the reason I respect Taco Bell so much, it's because of what everyone else isn't doing. Taco Bell has never promised us to be anything more than it is. Taco Bell has never sat there and been like, we have the greatest, most authentic. Never. They've never said those words. They would never try to. You know what you're getting. And that's that. Where I feel like every burger chain claims to have the best burgers. Ours are grilled, ours are restaurant quality, it's like so many promises. And Taco Bell is like their whole catchphrase, like, why don't you just not have a burger? Like, they didn't even say their food was good. They were like, we're not burgers. And you're like, that's right, you aren't Taco Bell. It's a respect thing, I feel like, that, I know what I'm getting, I know what I'm paying, and if they do mess up, you kind of give it to them, because you're like, yeah, you didn't tell me you wouldn't mess up, so it's a win-win.
All right. So let me, we could talk about that for a while, but I don't want to get too far along without mentioning the book that you released, A Day at the Zoo in 2062.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. The 2 weeks of like mandatory like quarantine happened back in 2020. I was like, okay, what am I gonna do right now? I was like, you know what I'll do? I've been meaning to like reorganize and kind of clean out one of the closets in my room and a couple of like cabinets, and so I was kind of going through stuff, and I found this notebook that I had written. It was labeled back in 2010, so exactly 10 years before that, and it was a bunch of short stories. I forgot that I had challenged myself to a 30-day challenge to write a short story every day. And it could be whatever I want. I could spend 5 minutes doing it. I could spend an hour doing it. I just had to do one that day. And I liked it so much, I ended up doing two of those. So I had something like 60 short stories in this notebook. And they were fun, but I just sort of forgot about it. I didn't have anything to do with it. It was 2010. I don't know. I was doing comedy, but I was pretty new. So that was kind of that. And so in 2020, when I found this notebook, it was basically like reading it for the first time. It had been 10 years. I'd forgotten about most of them. And so a bunch of them like genuinely caught me by surprise, where I was like, oh, this is actually funny. And I was starting to, 10 years had gone by. So I was like, oh, I can, I'm good enough now where I can fix this and make a new punchline here. I was coming up with new ideas. And so I just, because I had the time, started rewriting a bunch of them and then picking my favorites and all that. Next thing I knew, I had 50 short stories that I really liked, that I thought were really funny and well written. And I kind of just didn't know, okay, that was fun, but I don't know what I'm going to do with this. These don't really translate into stand up bits. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with 50 short stories. And then one of my best friends, he it's this great illustrator just for fun. And he showed me this new piece of like technology that he had gotten where he can basically draw digitally now, like with this pad and this special pen. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. What are you going to do with it? He's like, I'm not sure, but I have it now. And I was like, you know what? What if we just made a book? What if you drew a drawing for every one of my short stories? And we should have enough for like 120, 150 page book. Like, let's make a book. And he was like, how do you make a book? And I was like, I have no idea, but it looks like we have nothing but time right now. So let's Google it. So I did. I did it the hard way. I started just researching like, okay, what are the dimensions? What kind of fonts do I use? And then there's this whole rabbit hole of like, well, this font's for this genre and this font's for this. And it took a long time, but I was determined to make it sort of a 2020 goal of mine, so much so that I literally pressed the confirm button minutes before midnight at the end of 2020, right before 2021, and ordered the books from the publishing company to be printed. And I'm like really happy with it. It's also surprisingly easy to write a book. It's just 4 million steps. I think that's the there's so many stupid little things where you're just like, how do I get numbers on one side of the page on that one and numbers on the other side of the page on that one? It's just like dumb stuff like that that took forever to figure out. But
A lot of formatting.
yeah, it's out now. Yeah, a lot of formatting and just, I don't know, the whole font thing was like a big thing. They're like, well, you don't want to use this font for this genre. And you're like, is anyone paying attention to this?
And now,
But yeah, it's on Amazon now. Day at the Zoo in 2062. You could probably also just search Daniel Eachus and find it that way.
yeah, when I first visited your website, I want people to realize that you can kind of find your favorite little corner with Daniel Eachus. Whether you like the stand-up albums, if you want to watch some separate YouTube videos, if you want to order the book. Daniel, one other thing that you did, people do this with podcasts where, I mean, who knows, even with Dan Time, I mean, are there going to be new episodes in 2032? I don't know yet, but the fact that you actually strung together a couple dozen episodes and even alluded, I think in the last couple that you were saying, this might be the end, but that's not such a bad thing. Guys, if you just want to start burning away at some of these podcast episodes and get started, get a little taste of Daniel's material, that's the first thing that I did was because I'm driving around a lot. I don't have time to really stop and watch things during the day. So I got a kick out of some of these.
Oh, thanks. I honestly,
And that's
they were all
your worst favorite podcast.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm a planner. I don't know if you can tell that, but I
A little
plan a
bit.
lot of stuff out. I write a lot of stuff out. All my jokes are, I meticulously go over them over and over and over before I end up doing them or putting them on an album or anything. And this was like the first thing I ever gotten to do publicly that was just sporadic. I went in with a theme idea and kind of chose, the two things for the theme in the beginning. So for those of you not familiar, yeah, it's called Your Worst Favorite Podcast. And I will take a theme, something like theme parks, for instance. That would be the theme of the episode. And so the episode would work like this. I would talk about the worst ride at my favorite theme park, and then I would talk about my favorite ride at what I think is the worst theme park, which was sort of a positive spin on a negative thing and a negative spin on a positive thing. And I thought it was just fun to look at it from different angles. And it was a lot of fun to do, and a lot of fun to just sort of talk and not be so in my head about what exactly I was going to say about that thing. And I'm proud of a lot of the episodes. I think they turned out really fun.
The dating stories really had me going there, and fast food. I mean, if you need a starting point, fast food, please, everybody, just throw a dart and play one of these and get started on some Daniel Eachus, and I think that you'll want to listen to more and explore more and download the albums as well. Now, Carry the Pillows was your first stand-up release. Was that a long time coming? Were you working on that for a while, thinking about it for a while?
Yeah, I had pretty much worked on that. I think it was somewhere between 9 years to maybe 10. Maybe it was coming up on 10 years, which is pretty, I don't know, sort of standard, if there is a standard for stand-up comics. The first album, it usually takes forever to get to that point, and then after that, it's like every 2 or 3 years you're coming out with a new one. But yeah, it was basically a culmination of everything that I had come up with up until that point. Although that makes it sound much more grand than it actually is, because the first 5 years of stuff wasn't good enough to make it on the album. So it was probably more like the last 2 years of that 8-year run or whatever it was.
What was it like in just your first few times up on a stage and talking to just a handful of people? Were there some nights where you got off stage, you're like, that did not land very well? I don't know what happened there, but you seem to kind of have this quality about you where the next day is like, well, let's do that again.
Yeah.
Did you let
Well,
that bother you, or were nights kind of fell flat, or you felt great about the gig, and then you felt maybe not terrible, but just like, oh, well, what was that like in the very beginning?
well, I could tell you what it was like last week at a bad show. No, yeah, that stuff always happens. You always have, bad shows here and there. You hope that happens much less frequently as time goes on, which thankfully it has. I've always been, very, I don't know if driven's the right word, but as cheesy as this sounds, I've always been like a big football fan. And that's sort of the attitude there, where it's like you have a bad game, or you throw an interception. Like I said, I know this sounds corny, but you do something wrong and it's like, well, too bad. You got to have a short memory. You go back out there and you do it again. You figure out what went wrong and you fix it. So I feel like
That's
I always
right.
just naturally had that attitude. And I definitely subconsciously or not apply that to comedy all the time. But, sometimes I did a show last week. I won't say where it's at because I'll probably end up doing it again. Sometimes you're just like, I don't want to blame the crowd, but I have to blame the crowd. There's something wrong with how you guys perceive laughter, or just if you have humor. I'm not sure, but it happens where you just don't have an answer, and you're like, well, you know what? Let me just rewrite. Let me just come back in 3 years when I have all new stuff and try this over again. But yeah, you just gotta have a short memory. If as long as you're writing stuff that you find funny, then there's something there, and maybe in the beginning you're not skilled enough to like be able to figure out the right wording or where things should go or how exactly you should say it, but there's something there. And I guess having that trust, that confidence in that goes a long way, because you know, okay, well, I genuinely find this very funny. That means there's something I can do to fix it. And it's very rare that you genuinely find something funny and there's just nothing you can do, no matter how funny you are, how skilled you are at doing it, to get it to work. But it's a long game, man. Everyone just thinks we go up there and just talk about airplane food and fart on stage and call it a day. But there's so much that goes into it. It's such a long game of we're basically mad scientists up there just trying to figure stuff out.
Sometimes I look at it like you almost have to be the type of person that could carry a conversation at just a dead party where people are watching a ball game, nobody's talking, nobody's laughing, and you're like, well, I guess I'll bring up the next subject and the next one. I mean, it's not, but it's different with people that come to see you, but they're just not interacting with you. I've always thought that that's got to be a huge challenge to just write the jokes, make them transition well, and do it the next night and the next night in the next city.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, I definitely don't want to speak for every comic, but a lot of us, myself included, tend to be like sort of introverts. In real life, we're very quiet. I'm always quiet. I guess I'll just talk about me. I'm always quiet because I'm always listening and sort of like always analyzing like what's actually happening here, and you know, is there drama over in the corner, and figure out what's actually happening here that most people aren't seeing. And because of that, I feel like I'm always like very quiet. And then all the challenges now, you have to get on a stage with a room full of, you know, sometimes hundreds to thousands of people and be an extrovert. And it's like you have to be like, you know, is sort of this A personality and B personality, and just be
Right.
able to turn them off and on constantly. I think that's probably the biggest challenge of comedy is that sometimes your on-stage personality isn't exactly who you are in real life publicly. I mean, it's always who you are in your mind. You have to bring who you are in your mind out physically, and I think that takes a while to learn sometimes. That's what they like. People always say, like, oh, this person found their voice, and it's really just them going, oh yeah, that's that person in my head is finally now coming out of my mouth.
Right. Do you have any rituals or anything that you do before a show? Like, all right, I'm not going to eat after 4 o'clock today, or I need to make sure I go to bed at this time before this gig or whatever. Do you do things like that?
It's a spoonful of mayonnaise right before. No, not really. I'm a pacer. I'll say that much. And a lot of people think that, like, oh, you pace because you're nervous, which might be true for most people, but I pace because I naturally have such low energy that if I didn't pace, I think I would just die. I think my heart would stop working. I'm like anxious to get on there. Like, I just want to go up there and say that. Not. It's definitely not. In my mind, it's the opposite of nervous. I'm like, I know I want to get up there now and just do all this stuff that's in my head because I've been, you know, going over this all day or for the last few hours or whatever it's been. So I definitely pace before every one of my shows. I always write my set out on a piece of paper that's in my back pocket. I never look at it. I never use it, but I just like knowing that there's a plan. Because a lot of
Right.
times the plan gets derailed, not in something like a special or something that you're filming, but on a typical show, something will happen. And whether that screws up one joke or excuse me, whether that derails you into this whole tangent of things that you weren't even planning on talking about that night, something will throw you. And so I like knowing that, like, well, at least there was a script
Right.
at some point. But yeah, I don't know, nothing too weird.
Now, so
Yeah.
right now you're doing a run of dates to Southern California, right? Or I guess for anybody listening, I've got some people out on the West Coast. Where are you going to be the next couple weeks or so?
Yeah, I've been I kind of had a really busy, well, I was going to say a really busy summer, but it's really been a busy 12 years. It was the summer. I was out of state a lot, and so I kind of wanted to scale back this fall and do a lot more SoCal stuff and West Coast things. So I do have a few more Central California in early November. Mid-November, I do head to Southern Oregon to do some headline some shows in Grants Pass and Cave Junction. And the following weekend is headlining Stir Crazy Comedy Club. That's one of my favorite comedy clubs honestly, in the whole U.S. And that is in Glendale, Arizona, which is in Phoenix. That is November 17th and 18th. And then in early first weekend of December, I headline another one of my favorite clubs, Laughs Comedy Club in Tucson, which is actually where I recorded the Where's Daniel, the album. So there's a lot of West Coast stuff right now. San Francisco, let's see, San Diego. Yeah, a lot of California for the rest of the year. And then I'm actually hopping on headlining a bunch of Carnival cruises the first 6 months of this next year. There's going to be a lot of other club dates that I'll put out on my website. But if you happen to be on a Carnival cruise, there's a good chance you might see me on one of those. So if you do hear this, feel free to message me on any of the platforms, whatever you want, Craigslist, whatever you got, and tell me if you're going to be on one of those cruises, and I'll let you know if I'm going to be on that one.
And that's a great way to reach people who heard about you and they live in West Virginia or Maine or Nebraska, but they go on a cruise once a year.
Or Idaho.
Or Idaho.
Can't forget.
Daniel, just a couple other questions, and we'll wrap up here. We could keep talking, but when you have like just some wide open days, you don't have anything booked, do you do okay with those types of stretches where you're like, well, I guess I'll just watch some TV for 37 minutes, or do you always need to be kind of doing something at this time and then at this time? And
what does that mean, having nothing on a schedule? Well, I don't understand what that means. Honestly, yeah, it's funny, on the days, it's always the day before is the most important day. If I'm really busy, the day before sucks so much. I'm just like, oh my God, I gotta do this. I just go over my schedule over and over. Okay, I gotta fly here, get off on the plane there and go there, and then I'm driving there, and then I got this, and I have no time to sleep because I'm going to that club and straight to that club, fly to the next place. And the day before is absolutely the worst thing ever. And then when it actually starts happening, I love it. It's great. I'm on the plane. I'm like one of those weirdos on the plane who's excited to be there while everyone else is tired and cranky and telling the baby next to him to shut up and the sweaty guy next to them to get off their armrest. I'm that guy who's like super excited to be there. I love traveling when I'm actually doing it, but beforehand, it's daunting. It's extremely daunting. And on the opposite side of things, the day before, I know I finally get rest. This happened to me recently once I kind of got off the road for the fall, where I was like, oh man, I have like 2 weeks where I just have like local LA gigs. Like, this is going to be the most amazing thing ever. I couldn't wait for it. And then when it was actually happening, I was like, this is kind of boring. I miss flying. So I think at the end of the day, I just don't know what I want till I'm actually doing it. But it is a struggle going, mentally through this, like, okay, I'm touring now. Okay, no, I'm not. I'm working on a project. And I think I just like staying busy. So if I'm not touring, I am trying to, like, I'm on to the next project. What am I going to do next? Okay, am I going to record a special? Am I going to write another book? Is it, it's a script writing thing, like commercials? I've been doing a lot of commercial stuff recently. Just had a call back for another one today that was good. So I don't know. I just always try to keep moving because I think at the end of the day, I don't exactly know what I want. But that's part of life, huh? You figure it out.
That's a great mindset. And in the midst of all the madness and the planes and the travel, do you ever just look at your phone, look at the clock? You're like, all right, it's 2:37. I gotta call grandma. I gotta call somebody that's like stationary, that's a relative, that's in a house, that doesn't do what you do, and you're like, hey man, I haven't talked to her. I haven't called him in like 3 weeks, but maybe I need to do that. Do you have anybody in your circle where you're like, I'm gonna be on the phone for about 45 minutes, but I gotta do this?
Yeah, I make sure to call grandma in prison once a week. No, I'm just kidding. It'd be kind of funny though. I am actually very good at time management stuff. It helps to traveling a lot because so much of it is transportation. I've learned over the years to be like, okay, you're not just on a plane for 3 hours. You're sitting down doing something for 3 hours. So let's get stuff done. And a lot of times, if it's a local, especially in LA, you're in traffic, you're driving to shows. I try to go on a walk every day just to kind of like clear my mind. And I probably call my mom. My dad's always there too in the background, in the call, listening on speakerphone. I try to call my parents probably 4 or 5 times a week. Honestly, it's usually when I'm out on a walk. And I don't know. I think that's part of it. Now I'm in my 30s now. Don't tell Hollywood. I think I'm 16 or 18 or whatever.
Keep that going as long as you can.
Yeah, I feel like part of it being in your 30s is, I feel like when you start to get in your late 20s and you start maybe figuring out what you want to do as a career, you just start getting actually busy for the first time in your life. And then you hit your 30s and I feel like you just go, oh wait, this isn't going away. this doesn't get easier, because then you start thinking about like, well, what happens when I have a family, or like I get married, or you're like, that's just more things to think about. This never goes away. So I think the 30s is all about just accepting and figuring out, you just better make this work. You don't have another option. And so I think you're sort of forced into figuring out your time management, whether it's, like, okay, podcasts is going to be what I do when I'm in the car, because I need to just get my mind off stuff, or need to laugh, or need to learn something, or whatever you listen to podcasts for. But yeah, I've always been good at just, how do I fit everything into times that seem like, the things that people hate, which is usually being on planes and being transported from one thing to another. I try to be in the moment when I can. I don't want to be that guy who's like on my phone constantly or whatever, or in conversations and I'm busy texting people. But in, those times that are supposed to be boring or whatever, I try to get the most out of it, productive wise.
I like what you said right there, being in the moment, because I would think as a comedian, you're always trying to capture things that are happening in that moment. Because if you're not looking around, you may have just missed a 4-minute segment. I don't know how long it might be, but something like that. You may just something may have blown by you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
do you ever see stuff that happens like the day of a show? Do you ever see stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna work that in tonight? Or does it happen on the fly ever like that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, some of my favorite bits came from, stuff that just happened, or I try to write beforehand for most of them, but it's a good chunk, maybe 20%, 15% of the stuff that I've done, like I kind of tried spontaneously, or, there are shows, it just happens sometimes, especially in like a bigger city, when you're like LA, if you're trying to hit like 3 shows in a night or 4 shows in a night, where, at least one of those is not going to be good. There's not going to be that many people there. Maybe it's just comics in the back of the room. And you're like, this is gonna be so corny if I go up there and start doing jokes to my 4 friends in the bed. Like, this is the dumbest thing ever and the biggest waste of time. And maybe it's just me again trying not to waste any time, but I don't want to do that. I'm like, how do I be productive here? Let me actually tell this story that I don't really have any written jokes for yet, but who cares if it bombs, because I'm gonna bomb anyway tonight. So that's happened to me with several bits. And in fact, a new bit that I've been doing a lot that's not on any of the albums happened in that exact way, where I was at a show that it was just comics in the crowd. There's only like 5 of us. And I was like, I actually have a funny story that happened to me at a comedy show that the comedians will appreciate. And I did it and it just killed. They were just loving it. And I was like, okay, let me test this in front of a real crowd of like real people who aren't comics, who laugh at usually the darkest things and laugh when you're getting hurt usually. And I tried it in front of a crowd, and again, it just like, it did super well. And I was like, oh man, I'm so glad I like took that risk on it, because I don't know, I didn't even think to tell this story to people. So yeah, I mean, it happens where you just sometimes you just feel like, God, I need to change it. I feel too in my head. I feel like I've been too robotic on stage the last couple of nights. Let me just open up with 5 minutes of just talking about what my day was like, and then get into the set after. I try not to do that all the time, but sometimes you need to just throw in a curveball,
Keep it fresh.
Yeah, just like Taco Bell.
Well, Daniel, I love what you're out there doing. I noticed that you're Dan Eachus, or there's a tag. Dan, or do you sometimes go by Dan?
It's the stupidest thing ever. I've never in my life gone by Dan, but when social media first started, I was like, well, Dan's shorter, and people are going to get lazy and not want to spell out Daniel, like as if that stopped anyone. So I was like, I got to go by Dan on social media because it's shorter. And now I'm just stuck with it. Everything's Dan Eachus. But yeah.
Dan is when I was 15 because people started calling my older brother, Robert, Rob, and I thought he came up with it. And he said, people gave him that name. So I was like, well, I'm going to go by Dan. But I wear it. I own it. I love it. But I think that's part of just going back to our body types. And, do you remember being 13 or 14 and just getting out of the shower and looking at yourself and saying, what is this? God, what have you created here?
I did that earlier today. Yeah, well, I still wear that Dollar Shave Club thong around, so that helps with body image and all that. There's probably, I always try to look at the root of like things of like, yeah, it is weird why like Dan and Danny, especially Danny, why does it seem so much weirder than just going by Daniel, even though there's a million like Dans and Dannys in the world. It probably, I would assume, has something to do with the fact that like Daniel's a biblical name that's been around for, hundreds, thousands of years. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, within the last, I don't know, but I would assume within the last 100 or 2 years that people were just like, you know what, I'm going to change that. I'm going to go by Dan. It's like, you're going to change this thing that's been around for thousands of years just because you felt like it? Oh, yeah. And like, who's the savior of that? But G's? Is he going by G's now? Like, dude, like what? He's gonna start calling Moses Mo. Like, it feels weird to take this thing that's been around forever and been like, yeah, I'm gonna modernize it.
There was a lot of resistance with my family as a teenager because, like I said, it was about 15. My mom didn't like it. Nobody really liked it. They just accepted it over time. And then, now I kind of got that old guy at the bowling alley's name, and I'm okay with it.
You probably get people, I don't know, but like for me, I'm certain there's like two people, I know specifically two people that call me Dan, and I just don't question it because it's just, I don't know, it sounds right coming out of their mouth, and they've just always done. My dad will do that. He'll be like, hey, Dan, which I've never even questioned it. That's just how he just gets to say that, and no one else does. And then I got a comedian buddy, shout out my buddy Sean Grant. If he happens to be listening, he's always been like, "What's up, Dan?" And I've just never questioned it. I'm like, "Yeah." To him, I'm Dan. I do feel like if somebody called me Danny, though, I would just punch him in the face. I'd be like, "No one does that. You don't get to do that." But do you have that where you just like certain people like will maybe call you Daniel or something, and but it doesn't feel weird? You're like, no, that's just what they call me.
It's endearing, I would say. Like the guest of the last episode, I've known him so long that he calls me Daniel, and then a lot of family members do, and then some people by choice will, like you said, throw out Danny. I'll answer to anything. I don't think I've had anything too out there. I mean, boy, I used to get Danny boy, the pipes are calling, Dan the man. You got to imagine that happens constantly. Yeah. When I was little. And I got no problem with this one. People would sing the Elton John song to me, Daniel, my brother, and go off on the melody there. With your parents, did you ever ask them, what was the concept or what was the idea behind the name? My mom always said, well, I just liked the name, honey. So I just liked the name. Was yours a family name?
No, I don't know exactly where Daniel, I think, was just on a list of names that they liked. I don't know exactly why. The only story I know about my name is that they were set on my middle name being Sean, which it is. And they at first wanted to name me Eric. And then my dad said Eric Sean sounds too much like erection. So let's not name him that. And so like, well, we're not changing Sean, so let's change it to Daniel. And so that's the only story I know about my name, but it's probably a good thing it's not erection.
Thank God for your old man. I mean,
yeah. He's like, wait a minute, I know you like this name, but let me think about this. Let me think about bullies in high school first before you go naming the kid.
All right, folks. Well, hey, everybody listening, check out A Mild and Skinny Guy. That's got over 1 million views. If you got Paramount Plus at home, queue up Amy and Peter Are Getting Divorced. Is that already It's already been released, correct?
That's already, I have a super small role in that. My buddy wrote a part of that and was in it, and he was like, "Yeah, come by my house. Why don't you like do a quick?" I thought it was just my face being seen. And next thing I know, again, one of those moments where he's like, "Here's 10 lines," and I'm like, "All right." But then all of a sudden, next thing I know, it's on Paramount Plus, and yeah, so check that out. It's a full movie.
I understand that you do like to watch dramas. Everybody thinks that comedians must just be, round the clock, either writing jokes, laughing with their friends. Every day is just a riot. Do you have a favorite actor that's always doing dramas? And it's kind of a two-part question. And later in your career, would you like to accept a role in a full-length film?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite actor, but I can tell you right now, I'm genre wise. When I come home, I want true crime. I want I want dark, gritty. If no one's getting murdered, I'm not. Why am I even watching it? And honestly, I think it's because it's just all day. It's just all comedy, acting, comedy, and then you get home and you're just like, can I just wind down and watch someone solve a brutal murder tonight? Like, can I just do that for once? And I know it sounds like a joke, and it half is, but I've been really into like true crime documentaries and like, I don't know, dark history stuff, and just a lot of documentaries in general. I've re-gotten into some of the Ken Burns stuff, which shout out if
Oh,
I
love
know
it.
people tend to associate Ken Burns with that's like an older thing, blah blah. My grandparents watched that thing. Dude, he's still making stuff, and he just came out with the American Buffalo, which is a 2-part series, like literally a week ago, or I don't know when this is coming out, but very, very recently.
He's a
Um,
national treasure.
yeah, and that, man, I'm only halfway. I only finished the first of the 2 parts of that, and it is, man, it's good. I mean, by good, it's sad and depressing, and all that, but like it's educational, but at least once in every episode, he'll just throw out this thing that you're like, that literally blew my mind. I did not know that thing was happening or happened. And I feel like that's so rare nowadays. We have so much information coming at us at all times, and we see, firsthand videos of like so many crazy things in life that it's hard to be surprised by stuff anymore. And
Right.
so for him to like do that with facts and just pictures and videos that you didn't even know existed, that it's pretty incredible, and I really highly recommend. I know that sounds so basic, and you're like, why should I watch a stupid movie about bison? But I didn't realize, and I don't think most people realize, like how tied into America and just what happened with Native Americans and all that. The American buffalo was like, it's all that. It's, man, it's super good. I have nothing funny to say about it. Like, you should go watch that. It's very, very good.
I'm all
Um,
in.
yeah. But anyway, yes, I don't know about a favorite actor, but genre-wise, definitely drama. The darker, the grittier, the better. And I have always wanted to be. I would love, like, being in a comedy movie. Obviously, I would take any role. Really. I mean, look, I was in a thong in a commercial. But my, like, as stupid as this sounds, my ultimate dream, I would love to be in like an epic movie, like a Lord of the Rings or a Star Wars, like just an
Oh
epic,
yeah.
like, long thing. But even more than that, stupid as this sounds, I just want to do a movie where I'm forced to learn a skill. Like, if they're like, hey buddy, you're gonna have to learn to ride a donkey because that's what your character does, and so we're gonna send you to the donkey riding expert for 6 months, and you're gonna have to learn that. You know what I mean? Like that's like a dream of mine, to be like, you're like, okay, you're gonna have to learn to sword fight. So Daniel, like, go. You got one scene where skydiving off of a plane and having a sword fight. So you're gonna have to become a skydiving certified master and also learn the ways of the samurai or something. Like, that sounds amazing to me. I just want to learn a skill because of a movie.
That is something else. I mean, is there? I don't want to get way off on another abstract question, but are you afraid of anything that's like, I mean, people might be afraid of spiders, but like as far as trying something, just you jump out of an airplane if someone said, hey, you probably need to learn this for this role that we'd like to have you play.
Well,
Are
in
you
terms of jumping out of an airplane, I wouldn't jump off an airplane if it was still on the ground. Okay. I am like terrified of heights. And I get so tired of people who are just like, what, bro? You wouldn't skydive? Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Like,
right?
I'm not doing that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You're like, don't you want to live? I'm like, by taunting death? Like, that's life to you? I have no desire to test my fears to the extreme, but I do like to know where that line is. I'll give you an example. So, like, yeah, I'm terrified of heights, but I did recently. I got really into doing like indoor rock climbing and bouldering, and I've been doing that for like almost a year now, where I go regularly. And even though those walls are only somewhere between like when you're bouldering, not tethered in to anything, you have no ropes. They're usually between like 10 and 15 feet. It's really not that high up. Generally speaking, 2 to 3 times your body length. Um, that's terrifying still. When you're afraid of heights, that's like the worst ever. I don't care about falling off of a mountain. I'm like, because then I'm like, I would for sure die. But falling from 12 feet, where you're just like, I don't know, that now it's up to me how I fall. Do I do the rolly thing, or like now I'm the idiot if I die in this situation? That's way more terrifying to me because it's up to my skills, and if I die or not, or what I break, or if I break anything. So I've been trying to test my like fear of heights with that and be like, let's try to get over this part. Or what can I do to like
you have
just
this, you've got this natural
balance that out? Or
curiosity, I would say, about just seeing if you can pull it off. I feel like you've got that approach.
yeah,
Let me just
yeah,
see if I could do it.
yeah. And again, I want to come across like he's a daredevil, man. Like I wouldn't even. I don't. There's so many things I wouldn't do because I'm like that's stupid. I don't need to. I comedy definitely teaches you about yourself more than anything I've ever done in the world. Comedy. I know I'm biased, but like it is a giant self exploration. And so I'm kind of on that journey with life the same I am with, I've accepted the things that absolutely terrify me. And I've accepted the things that, like, yeah, I'm never going to get over that fear. That's never going to
Mm-hmm.
completely go away. But I could know where the line is. I could know what exactly I'm scared. I could know that maybe I can slowly get over that fear. Maybe I don't have to accept it. And some things I do have to accept. So I feel like it's all about just figuring out who you are and what terrifies you. And I don't know. It's all one big journey with that in comedy.
There's really, and this is me speaking to the listeners, talking about fear, and really haven't approached this subject on another episode before. But one thing that I've learned getting a little bit older is that you can conquer not every fear, but a lot of fears, and you can get through some things, some experiences, just by getting control of your breathing. There's a lot of things
Mm.
that 10 years ago you think, oh, I could never do that. And then sometimes you might just be almost forced into a situation. You're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then you practice breathing exercises, and you can pull off a lot, whether you enjoy it or not. There are quite a few things that are possible out there if you just get that oxygen intake going the correct way.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different tricks to certain things, and really having an open mind too of just like, okay, maybe this thing sounds. How is breathing supposed to help? Like having that attitude does not help you at all. Yeah, you have to have an open mind and be like, okay, well, let's actually try this thing and dive into it and see how far I can go. But at the same time, too, I think it's healthy to sometimes accept, or most times accept where you fall in that. I mean, you should always try to do everything. I feel like absolutely as best that you can, and if you're not doing as well in certain things, find new ways to do it, find new perspectives. But at some point, you can. It's okay to accept. When it comes to like rock climbing and me and all that stuff, I've accepted I'm not gonna go free solo climb. Half dome or whatever. I'm not gonna go do, but like there's some cool bouldering things in Joshua Tree in Zion, there's some cool hikes where like it kind of helps to know about bouldering, and I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Although that would have been terrifying to me even a year ago, now I can do that, and I've accepted that like that's actually what I want out of this. I don't need to climb Everest. I just want to look at this cool rock and near Zion. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not giving up, because there is a difference between just, being like, oh, it's too hard, I give up, and really, really trying everything to best of your ability, and deciding like maybe I don't actually want what everyone else's final goal is. Maybe my goal is more specific, and that's okay too,
That's right. Did you have anybody growing up who I'm sure still supports you, but had just a much different plan, another profession that they imagined you to be in, that you kind of had to kind of disappoint their expectations and like, nah, I'm doing this now. Did that go on with anybody where you're
Yeah,
like,
I was supposed to be in a traveling circus, and no, yeah, definitely. I was like a very smart kid. Well, just all throughout, I got straight A's, valedictorian, like always a smart guy in school, and I think that helps a lot in comedy, honestly. But that's not so apparent. Like people just think, oh, you do comedy because you flunked out in school. This is actually the opposite. I know comedians are some of the smartest people I know, even if they weren't smart in school or whatever. But anyway, point is, because I always got good grades, valedictorian, I feel like when you get A's in school, people just go to they just go straight to high money jobs, like job, careers, like lawyer, doctor, whatever, something like that.
right.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be creative. I want to do creative stuff. And so that was definitely hard for, I would say, family or parents at least to swallow in the beginning. It wasn't until I started getting booked doing commercials, and I feel like they would see me on TV. They would go, oh, wow, okay, he's actually making money off this. Oh, he can actually do this. Oh, there he is in a thong. You know what I mean? Like, it helped take that out of their mind that, that maybe I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, anything like that. No offense if you are, by the way. It's solid jobs, but
yeah, with the creative mind, and I'm sure you had to figure out all the different processes and the day-to-day work that you had to put in to be successful. You had to win people over by showing them that you could, tackle all that stuff behind the scenes too.
yeah, and that helps comedy as much as that kind of sucks. It, all of that kind of goes into it. I feel like if you go in thinking I'm the funniest guy in this room, you're probably not that funny. You're probably not gonna do that well. I mean, there's a lot of that like sort of underdog quality that like goes into doing comedy in general. People, usually you end up seeing a lot of smart people, because I feel like a lot of times those people were in positions where people didn't think they were very smart. And I feel like a lot of comedians are out to prove that like I'm actually probably more clever than you think I am. And that sort of feeds into the motivation, I think, in a lot of ways with most comics that you see.
I really like just now where you pointed out your background and being valedictorian of your class, and I'm glad we addressed that on this episode, where maybe not my listeners, but a lot of people they don't imagine comics to have some other skill set or career that they probably could have just walked right into. They just kind of think that maybe this guy used to be a busboy or just knows how to tell jokes. So I'm glad you touched on that too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, the sort of kind of running joke with comedies that we all get into it thinking like, sweet, I don't want a desk job. I don't want to. And then you get into it, you're like, this is so much more work than anything. You're just working constantly. And when you're not working, you're still thinking about work. You're still thinking about just jokes and do you wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, I could fix that thing, and now I got to do this, and I got to promote myself at the same time, and I got to edit videos and learn how to do that, and be a good public speaker, and go on podcasts and promote myself that way. And there's just so many things that go into it. And then on top of all of that, you're literally pouring your heart out on stage, doing something that is very vulnerable instead of put all that work into it and then sometimes have nights where it doesn't go well or people don't think you're funny or they hate you or they want to fight you or whatever it is. You're like, oh my God, I did all this work for that reaction and now I gotta get off stage and go to the next show and do it all over again and ignore that and forget that I just threw an interception.
I love that how you connected back there, because I think you're equipped with the right mindset where you could get back to the hotel and look at the calendar and say, well, that night's done and I'm on to tomorrow. I'm already thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
you have to. Especially acting too. I feel like I had agents very early on tell me that you go in, you do the best audition you've ever had in your life, and then you leave that room and then you stop thinking about it immediately or you're going to go crazy. And I feel like that's always been a good philosophy with not just comedy but with life in general, to try to be present and to try to like focus on this one thing, do it the absolute best, and then go live your life. And if you get called to do it again in some way or you have to do it again, then sweet, go focus on it again, get back into that mindset. But just sort of toiling over certain things or it's different because I talk about like, oh, you're always thinking about how to make stuff better, and I think that's healthy. But thinking about like just I should have done that differently and this went wrong and that went wrong and I'm so unlucky because I didn't choose, that's just gonna like, you're just gonna go mad. That's not gonna help anybody or anything.
all right, DanielEachus.com, EACHUS, on your streaming platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google. You can find Where's Daniel. Man, I wish you nothing but the best and can't wait to see your new material as it comes out.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for this episode. And remember, when you're having a moment, a day, a week, and things aren't working, you're just throwing darts and nothing's sticking, get over that day, get over that lunch hour, get whatever. Get rid of that girlfriend, get rid of that boyfriend that's dragging you down. Get all those people that you're collecting out of your life that are serving no purpose, if they are, and take charge of your passion, whatever it is. I always throw something like that in there at the end, Daniel. So thanks for being here, and would love to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, if you love that episode, tell a friend about it. I think every show probably asks you to leave a review, leave a rating, and I appreciate it if you do. But if nothing else, just talk about Dan Time. It really helps the visibility of the program. You can find Dan Time on all the social media pages, and you can also reach me at dantimepod@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week.